Committee will come to order. Committee meets today to mark up H.R. 1735, the National Defense Authorization Act for the fiscal year 2016. As y'all well know, we've got some scheduling challenges today, and so I'm going to ask unanimous consent to have my full written statement be made part of the record. Without objection, so ordered. I do want to make 3 brief comments as we begin today. Number 1, it's good to see Adam back. As y'all know, he's had some significant orthopedic surgery, and he and I have been in touch by phone and email and so forth, but it took a fair amount of grit for him to come back across the country and be here today. So I appreciate him making the effort to be with us. And I very much appreciate all the hard work and the spirit with which all members have brought to the things that we have done so far this year. We've tried to do some things a little differently. Everybody's been indulgent with that, and I am very grateful. I'm particularly grateful where members have supported me on issues where our institutional interests were involved. And I know it's tricky sometimes when there are policy differences for us to stand up for our right to receive information, for example. But I just think it's really important for us to remind ourselves we're a separate branch of government with separate responsibilities, with oversight and other duties, and that's the way the founders intended it. But I think we're off to a good start, and I appreciate that. Second point is this bill marks up to the House-passed budget, and if the Senate will get their act together, the House-Senate budget. It is, in my view, not enough money. It is certainly not the ideal way to budget when you add to OCO, but it does reach the level that General Dempsey told us was the lower ragged edge of what it takes to defend the country. And as you can tell, there are still tough choices to be made. It's not like there's a lot of extra money here. So I think we all need to keep working for a better way to promote fiscal responsibility and defend the country at the same time, rather than these arbitrary caps and sequestration mechanisms that exist today. Last point I want to make is this: there's significant reform in this bill. I don't think we can credibly argue for more money if we're not willing to make changes that improve the way that money is spent. Now, some people have criticized some of the reforms for going too far. Some people say they haven't gone far enough. What I'm sure of is that there are lots of excuses to delay or do nothing. I just want to make it clear that as far as the reform provisions go especially, I want to work with all members and the department and the services to improve these provisions as we move along through conference. None of them are perfect, and they all will be and should be improved. But I think it's essential that we work to get better value for the taxpayers' money, and I also think it's essential, as we've heard through a lot of our briefings and hearings, that we improve the agility of our system to keep up with the evolving national security needs. This bill is a start. It's not the answer. It's just a start. But I do think that's a key part of our responsibility this year. I'd yield to Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I'll just make a couple quick comments, mainly because my first comment is it's going to be a long day. So brevity is going to be appreciated by the chairman and everybody else. Huge committee, lots of amendments. It's going to be tough to get through it all, so we'll have to work together to get that done. Second, by and large, I agree with the chairman. I think we've done some great work, as always, with the staff and the members. I'm really committed to trying to put together a National Defense Authorizing Act that best serves the men and women who are protecting us, and I think we do a very, very good job of that. I continue to be concerned, first of all, by the existence of the budget caps. We found a little dodge here with the OCO. but that is not the best way to fund the Defense Department, number one. Number two, it leaves open the question that there are many others, myself included, who feel that the budget caps have a negative impact on things other than defense. Yes, defense is incredibly important, but so is infrastructure. So is education, so is healthcare, so is basically having the basic infrastructure of a country, and those things continue to be cut. As we work our way through this process, will the President and will others allow defense to sort of sneak out of the Budget Control Act box through OCO while everything else continues to fall behind? I have my doubts. So anyone who thinks that, the Budget Control Act is something we no longer have to worry about on the Armed Services Committee, there are still many rounds to go in that fight. And I am concerned, because I think if we go to Budget Control Act levels, we will not be adequately funding defense, even with the very needed reforms that the chairman said, has indicated are put into this bill. Lastly, and you will hear me say this, hopefully not too often, I'll try to make it once or twice during the course of the next 14 hours. If we are going to have an efficient Department of Defense, we cannot simply protect every single parochial program interest that we have. Every time the Department of Defense comes along and tries to save money, somebody steps up and tries to stop it because it impacts their district. And I get that. I will also say there are some people, people do also legitimately disagree. But do we legitimately disagree on everything? I mean, literally everything the Department of Defense has proposed as a way to save money in light of the Budget Control Act and in light of, as the chairman said, even with the OCO money, we're still not where we need to be. This Congress has blocked, most notably, as will come up later, base closure. Every estimate says we're 20% over capacity. This bill, once again, prohibits the Department of Defense from doing base closure. There are many, many other examples that will come out throughout the course of the evening. But as I said, the little plaque down there that I can't see that talks about Article 1, Section 8, doesn't say that it is our job to protect every single program that is of interest to our district. It says it's our job to protect the national defense. And sometimes those things conflict. So I hope as we go through this, we'll give the Department of Defense the flexibility it needs to make the decisions it needs to make in a tight budget environment. We can't do everything we'd like to do. No way. In a tight budget environment, we give the Department of Defense the flexibility they need to adequately do their job and protect our country. And with that, I yield back and look forward to the markup.
I thank the gentleman, and I've got some preliminary announcements and procedural things, but first, if we can, up on the screen, if I've got a warning for folks, don't let this be your fate. In other words, I don't want to cut anybody off, but not everything has to be said by everybody as we go through the next 14 hours. So my wife found that and gave it to me, which has always been a reminder to me. We may see it again over the course of the evening. The order of consideration for today's markup of H.R. 1735 will follow our subcommittee structure. We'll begin first with the subject matter that falls under the jurisdiction of the Subcommittee on Emerging Threats and Capabilities, then the Subcommittee on Tactical Air and Land Forces, then the Subcommittee on Sea Power and Projection Forces, then Subcommittee on Readiness, Subcommittee on Military Personnel, Subcommittee on Strategic Forces, and finally the full committee matters. Second, let me remind members that any amendment offered must be in writing and 80 copies must be available at the desk for distribution, except for those of you who submitted your amendments by Monday's deadline, and then the committee made the copies for you. In addition, if a member has an amendment that involves jurisdiction of other committees, we request the member, before he or she offers the amendment, have a letter from the respective committee chairman indicating their waiver of the right of referral. I note that I impose the same requirement before including language in the underlying mark. And I remind members that this is an approach we have followed for many years and is done so we can proceed directly to the House floor without our bill being sequentially referred to other committees. Also, is the practice of the committee that amendments involving additional spending should identify suitable offsets. Members must not offer amendments that could result in a point of order against H.R. 1735 on the House floor during its consideration. I also want to remind all members that House rules prevent consideration of a bill reported by a committee unless the report includes a list of congressional earmarks or a statement that there are no congressional earmarks. It is the policy of the House Republican Conference that no member shall request any congressional earmark. Therefore, our bill cannot have any earmarks as in previous years. It's the Chair's intention to operate under the 5-minute rule in order to allow all interested members the opportunity to speak in an orderly manner. Without objection, members have 5 legislative days within which to submit written statements into the record. So ordered. Before beginning with subcommittee reports and following consultation with Mr. Smith, I ask unanimous consent that the provisions contained in the reports of the various subcommittees and the chairman's mark for the full committee provisions be considered for the purposes of this markup as original text of H.R. 1735, and that these provisions be considered as having been read, and the bill can be open to amendment at any point. Is there objection? Without objection, it is so ordered. Without objection, the chair is authorized to declare a recess at any time. Without objection. Now, the committee will receive the report of the Subcommittee on Emerging Threats and Capabilities. Pursuant to Committee Rule 17 and in consultation with the ranking member, will postpone recorded votes on the amendments of this particular subcommittee mark until the end of the subcommittee mark, which I hope is before we have to break for the joint session. The chair recognizes the distinguished chairman of the subcommittee, the gentleman from South Carolina, Mr. Wilson, for any comments he'd like to make.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I'm very pleased to present today the Subcommittee on Emerging Threats and Capabilities portion of the fiscal year 2016 National Defense Authorization Act. In many ways, it is both fitting and appropriate that this subcommittee is going first today. We are the subcommittee that oversees the most forward-looking, critical, cutting-edge, and in-demand aspects of the Department of Defense, including the defense-wide science and technology efforts, such as the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, or DARPA, and the Military Service Laboratories, Special Operations Forces, Cyber Command portions of the National Security Agency, and our cyber forces across the Department of Defense and military services, and many other programs and activities that deal with evolving and emerging threats, from the weapons of mass destruction to an expansionist Russia to the rise of the Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant, ISIL or Daesh. Mr. Chairman, the Emerging Threats and Capabilities Subcommittee has been active in conducting oversight in all of these important areas, and this mark represents a comprehensive and bipartisan product that all members can be proud of. It is worth noting that much of the oversight conducted by this subcommittee is classified and takes place behind closed doors, where we review and remain current on sensitive activities and the programs involving the Department of Defense intelligence capabilities, Special Operations Forces, and cyber forces. I am grateful that the members of this subcommittee take this sensitive oversight role very seriously as we consider Department of Defense authorities and programs that enable these sensitive activities. Mr. Chairman, our Emerging Threats and Capabilities Subcommittee mark provides for stronger cyber operations capabilities, looks to safeguard our technological superiority, fully enables our Special Operation Forces for today and tomorrow, and provides resources and authorities to counter terrorism, unconventional warfare threats, and weapons of mass destruction. Before we continue, I'd like to say thank you to our ranking member, Mr. Jim Langevin of Rhode Island, who's been an appreciated and thoughtful partner and leader on many of these issues. It has been a pleasure to work with you, Jim, and I look forward to continuing our bipartisan working relationship. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I look forward to discussing the emerging threats and capabilities marked today, and with that, I yield back the remainder of my time.
Thank the gentleman. Chair recognizes the distinguished ranking member of the subcommittee, the gentleman from Rhode Island, Mr. Langevin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and let me begin by thanking and expressing my sincere appreciation to Chairman Wilson and all the members of the Emerging Threats and Capabilities Subcommittee, and most especially our dedicated staff. I am very proud of the bipartisan history that this subcommittee enjoys, and the mark before us today is a better product because of it. The mark carries initiatives in a variety of important areas, including cyberspace programs and authorities. I'm particularly pleased that we paid particular attention to Cyber Command and the cyber mission teams, especially getting regular updates on how that is unfolding to make sure there's not a duplication of effort, but that we're giving it the proper support and ability to move forward as they are. So I thank the Chairman for his due diligence in that in particular. Also, technology transition in general and the Rapid Innovation Program in particular. I also am pleased with the support we've given with respect to research and development and integration of advanced technologies, special operations, counterterrorism, and unconventional warfare, including increasing congressional oversight of sensitive operations and supporting the families of our special operators, and the threats posed at home and abroad by weapons of mass destruction. Mr. Chairman, I am proud of the subcommittee's efforts across a diverse and exciting portfolio. The world is a very dangerous place, as we know, and it is this committee's responsibility to do the hard work that gives our men and women in uniform and the dedicated scientists, engineers, intelligence professionals, and other civilians that support them in the defense enterprise the tools and the capabilities that they need to keep our nation and our allies safe and secure, and reassure and strengthen our partners and friends. So I think that the efforts of the Emerging Threats and Capabilities Subcommittee truly reflect our dedication to that purpose. And again, it's been a pleasure to work with Chairman Wilson, the staff, and the members of the committee. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
I thank the gentleman. Is there any further discussion of the subcommittee's report? Are there any amendments to the subcommittee report?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Wilson?
I ask unanimous consent to call up an en bloc package of amendments that have been worked and approved by the minority.
Without objection so ordered, will the clerk please pass out the amendments to be offered en bloc? Without objection, reading of the amendments will be dispensed with. Gentleman from South Carolina is recognized for 5 minutes to offer and explain the amendments.
I call up en bloc package number 1, comprised of the following. Amendment number 24 by Mr. Wilson and Ms. Tsongas to modify personnel authorities for research and engineering facilities. Amendment number 25 by Mr. Wilson to repeal or revise reporting requirements. Amendment number 31R1 by Mr. Hunter to limit funding on the distributed common ground system for Special Operations Forces until a report is delivered. Amendment number 36 by Mr. Lamborn directing a brief on combatant commanders directed energy requirements. Amendment number 70R1 by Mr. Nugent directing a brief on the Special Operations Forces directed energy requirements. Amendment number 79 by Mr. Bridenstine on the Mentor Protege Program. Amendment number 100R2 by Mr. Whitman on cybersecurity and cyber vulnerability assessments. Amendment number 111R1 by Mr. Whitman directing a brief on the language translation technology. Amendment number 140 by Ms. Gabbard on high-performance computing needs. Amendment number 171 by Mr. Brooks directing a brief on high-resolution terrain data requirements. Amendment number 184R1 by Mr. Castro concerning research and development work with the biosafety facilities. Amendment number 188R1 by Mr. Walz directing a briefing on major force program funds for cyber operations. Amendment number 191 by Mr. Walz directing an annual report for National Guard capabilities. Amendment number 202 by Mr. Franks reestablishing the Commission to assess threats from electromagnetic pulse attack. Amendment number 231 by Mr. Johnson increasing research and development funds for historically black colleges and universities and minority institutions. Amendment number 232R1 by Mr. Hunter directing a comptroller review, general review of the distributed common ground system. Amendment number 270R1 by Mr. Knight concerning the laboratory demonstration programs. Amendment number 284R2 by Mr. Lambert and Ms. Graham, establishing a cooperative program with Israel to develop anti-tunneling systems. And amendment number 285R1 by Mr. Lambert, directing an assessment of the directed energy industrial base.
Is there any further discussion on the en bloc amendments? Gentleman from Colorado.
Mr. Chairman, very briefly, I have several here. I'm on this subcommittee, but I only want to mention one in particular. I've worked with Representative Gwen Graham on this. We both had bills. We wrapped it up into one amendment that you see at the bottom of the page. Tunneling is a huge issue. People are trying to tunnel into Israel. There were 30 tunnels after the last hostilities. At our southern border, we have tunneling for smuggling and other purposes. So this establishes a joint program for our two countries to work together. Other countries could be brought in as well, and technology to be developed to detect and defeat tunnels. And this is something we can be proud of, Mr. Chairman. I think everyone on this committee would wholeheartedly support this. So that's one good thing that we're really doing in this en bloc package. Thank you. I yield back.
Is there further discussion? If not, the question is on the en bloc amendments offered by Mr. Wilson. So many in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. Being the chair, the ayes have it. The ayes have it, and the amendment is adopted. Are there further amendments to this section? Gentleman from Florida.
Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment at the desk.
Clerk will please pass out the amendment. Without objection, we'll dispense, the reading of the amendment is dispensed with. Thanks. And the gentleman from Florida is recognized for 5 minutes to offer and explain his amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do appreciate this time. I offer a very simple, nonpartisan, non-controversial sense of Congress holding the Air Force accountable for using the $10 million appropriated in the FY15 as Congress clearly intended. The Air Force has really been skating around this congressional intent a lot lately, and almost everyone has experienced their frustration on tactics, retiring the A-10, pilfering the Air National Guard, flip-flopping on Global Hawk versus the U-2, and other issues that continue to come up. Many of you have heard me talk about CHAMP as the directed energy system most ready to transition out of the laboratory into the warfighter. But for the uninitiated, the CHAMP stands for Counter Electronics High-Powered Microwave Advanced Missile Project. It's a non-lethal munition that incapacitates all electronics without harming people or destroying facilities. I'm confident members of this committee can instantly recognize that the value of a tool like this could bring to our warfighters today. We've had combatant commanders testify in front of this committee that they would like to have that in their arsenal of things to defend this country. The Air Force actually tested this particular model on a cruise missile back in 2012, which was successful. Money that was put forward, and last year, 2 Congresses ago, Congress told the Air Force to pursue both the near and far-term joint non-kinetic counter-electronic systems to get a revolutionary directed energy program called CHAMP to the combatant commanders a decade ahead of program schedule. Last year, this Congress appropriated $10 million for that purpose. Congressional intent for the $10 million appropriated last year could not be any clearer. I know that because I was the one who established the intent during floor debate on the amendment that appropriated the funds, an amendment passed by voice vote. This year, a few people in the Air Force middle management at the Pentagon and others are trying to pilfer those funds we intended to use for this purpose of getting CHAMP to the combatant commanders. However, the Air Force has thus far not delivered this weapon to our commanders in the field. My amendment removes any doubts as to what this committee and this Congress has repeatedly said. Once again, Mr. Chairman, to make it very short, we've had combatant commanders ask for this. It's been tested. It's been utilized. We're saying now use on a short term, put it on cruise missiles that we have that are sitting there in a warehouse because we've removed the nuclear devices off of them, and they're there today to be utilized. The Air Force has been dragging their feet on this. And, Mr. Chairman, I ask that this amendment receive a positive response from this committee, and I'd be glad to answer any questions. And lastly, you know, it's one of these things where the Air Force says they want to develop a reusable system, which I absolutely agree with. But on the short term, you could deploy this in 18 months and get it to our combatant commands now, and at the same time continue to work on the long term in regards to on a reusable system. There's nothing that would preclude us from doing that. As a matter of fact, we recommend that in all the language that we've put forward. And so I offer this amendment, and Mr. Chairman, I stand ready to answer any questions.
Gentleman yields back. Chair will recognize himself in opposition to the amendment, not because I disagree with anything that Mr. Nugent said about the program itself. This is one of those instances where the chair has to be the heavy. And so I oppose this amendment for two reasons. Number one is it's a sense of Congress in report language. Now, the report is the opinion of the committee. We have never given a sense of Congress in the committee report. The two are two different things. So that's fairly technical. The second reason, however, is that this money was appropriated in the omnibus for fiscal year 15. And so now we're going to put in the fiscal year 16 bill what the appropriators meant when they put it in last year's appropriation bill. They don't take very kindly to us reinterpreting what they meant, and we didn't have a comparable provision in our bill. So, you know, again, I don't disagree. I'm not arguing the point of the program with the gentleman, but to have a sense of Congress in our report language and to retroactively interpret appropriation language are two things we have never done before, and I think lead us into some procedural problems. So therefore, I unfortunately must oppose the amendment. Is there other discussion on the amendment? Is the gentlelady from Florida?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to thank Chairman Thornberry, Chairman Wilson, Ranking Member Smith, and Ranking Member Langevin for their help in ensuring this amendment was included in this en bloc package. And I want to offer my thanks to my colleague, Mr. Lamborn, for his work and cooperation on this bipartisan amendment. The bipartisan amendment will authorize research and development of an anti-tunneling defense system to protect Israel from terrorist attacks. This system also has uses for the United States on our borders, at our foreign embassies and forward operating bases, and to help protect our allies, including South Korea. It includes language from H.R. 1349, the Graham-Lamborn United States-Israel Anti-Tunneling Defense Cooperation Act. Our closest ally in the Middle East, Israel, lives under the constant threat of terrorist attacks from underground tunnels. This amendment will launch an unprecedented new initiative to protect Israel from this dangerous menace. To secure peace, we must help Israel secure their state from attacks. Iron Dome has saved countless civilian lives, and an anti-tunneling defense shield will save countless more. I yield back, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to offer my statement.
Yeah, and just to clarify, I think the gentlelady was discussing the previous amendment, which was fine. Is there other discussion on Mr. Nugent's amendment? If not, the question is on the amendment offered. I'm sorry.
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, gentleman from Rhode Island.
Thank you. If I could just chime in here briefly. First of all, I thank Mr. Nugent for his thoughtful and intense support for directed energy, and he and I share that interest. I've been a strong opponent of directed energy, and I support the CHAMP program I think that directed energy is going to be the game-changing technology that it's going to both protect our forces, our interests in the fleet going forward, and we need to press the department harder than what has been in the past. Because I think as this technology matures and a lot of it is ready to be fielded, and I don't know that the department's moving fast enough on it. I'd like to see them move faster. But as you pointed out, Mr. Chairman, the amendment as it's drafted is procedurally deficient, and especially when you're talking about asking the department to ostensibly retroactively spend funds that were appropriated in FY15, and this is the FY16 authorization bill that we're looking at. Unfortunately, I can't support it because of that, but I do applaud the gentleman for his sincerity and support of directed energy, and we need to see that move forward. But this amendment isn't the time and the place. So I yield back.
Thank the gentleman. I completely agree with everything he said. Is there further discussion? If not, the question occurs on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Florida, Mr. Nugent. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. No. Being the chair, the noes have it. The noes have it, and the amendment is not agreed to. Are there further amendments to this section of the bill? If not, If not, Chair recognizes the gentleman from South Carolina, Mr. Wilson, for the purpose of a motion.
Of the report as amended.
Questions on the motion of the gentleman from South Carolina. So many in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. Quorum being present, the ayes have it, and the motion is adopted.
Hey, and
What?
Conaway disrupted the whole meeting.
Hey, I'm just getting going here. So, okay, I think that's good. We've completed one subcommittee provision. At this point, the committee will stand in recess for the joint session. I would ask that everybody be back right after the joint session. We'll try to get going again at 12:15. There will be lunch provided in the anteroom at that point. Please hustle back. Committee stands in recess.